There are a few ways we can begin to really work through this negative ego voice and the voices of the inner critics. In fact, I have about 7 of them. And just to share a little personal story, I learned this from my coach, an inner critic exercise, my former coach, and it literally transformed my life. I had all these fears about doing this work. That's why I'm standing here right now. And I had to identify them in the first place and then separate from them. So that brings me to the first, quote, step, which is just identifying them in the first place. So often they're so deep-seated, and we've been living with these beliefs, these limiting beliefs, our whole lives, or false stories, and we don't even know they're there. They're just there's just this running refrain that goes through our heads like a bad song. So the first step is just identifying them, and there are a couple ways we could do that. One, I've already mentioned, meditation. The other is through visualization and actually visualizing yourself, usually through guided meditation. I have some on my podcast, The Courageous Path. Visualizing yourself going back in time and even taking yourself into a scene when you experienced something that you believe was at the root of a limiting belief, of creating a limiting belief. And often it's connected to a person. So visualizing yourself saying to this person, a parent or an older sibling or a teacher or maybe another adult usually, thank you, believe it or not, we thank them for what you've done. Sometimes this is hard if it's been trauma, but so do what feels right to you. Thank you for what you said. I know that you were doing the best you knew at the time, but I've been carrying this belief that was created from what you said or did for years, and it's not serving me anymore, and I'm choosing to separate from this in my life. So literally visualizing yourself talking to this person, writing a letter to the person, even if you don't send it to them, can be really powerful. And then another tool to start is to separate from this ego self, the negative aspects of it that is to write, as I just mentioned, writing a letter, but even writing more to kind of process where these beliefs came from. How are they helping you? What would your life be like if you were to separate from them? And imagining how all of that, how would you feel? Free, maybe liberated. You would feel much happier. Elizabeth Gilbert wrote a brilliant book called Big Magic, in which she talks about, in the car of life, we have these fears or these doubts and worries, as I like to say, that constantly are trying to climb into the front seat and sit on our laps, and often they're just driving the car. We're just sitting there, and our lives are being run by our fears. We're not doing lots of things because of something we're afraid of. So in the car of life, as she says, it's constantly our job to push those fears aside, to put them in the back seat, say, we know they're not gonna fully go away, right? But they have to stay in the back seat. They can't come in the front, they can't touch the controls, and they definitely cannot drive. So it's a constant practice of just pushing them aside. There's lots of different ways we can work with this. You can say a little phrase like, leave me alone, or not now, or some people even go like, shut up. Sometimes you have to be really firm with them, right? But knowing that they're part of who we are as well, and often we have some compassion for this voice. And there's often multiple ones, not in a schizophrenic way, but different ways that these beliefs we've accumulated from our lives have evolved into almost like their own personalities. And one of the exercises that I alluded to earlier is about writing a biography of this voice. What would it look like if it were a person? This is what I learned from my former coach. Where would it live? Does it have kids? Does it have a job? And then writing a goodbye letter, almost like an obituary, to really separate from it. So, so powerful.